The power of friendship once again takes over in the NBA. The New York Knicks just traded Bojan Bogdanovic and 4 first-round picks to acquire Mikal Bridges. This is one of the first major moves that we have seen of the offseason, and it's one that I think can make a big difference in the Eastern Conference. Looking from the Brooklyn Nets' point of view, this is a team that essentially had no future. When trying to build their big three of a few years ago, virtually all of their draft picks became owned by either the 76ers or the Rockets. There was no future in the draft, and this roster could only go so far. Mikal Bridges was their best player, but over the last 2 seasons, we saw that he just didn't take that superstar level jump. So Brooklyn got a great return for him, and draft picks that will make up for what they don't own and will hopefully give them some sense of a future. They practically own the future of the Phoenix Suns, and now they also own the future of the New York Knicks. While we also don't know the full details of it yet, it looks like that they're going to get back their own 2026 first-round pick, and given that this team is actively tanking, that could be an incredibly valuable pick. Depending on how much tanking there is, we also might see a few other players move. While Nick Claxton is not expected to come back, Cameron Johnson can be an effective 6th man on a contender, and Cam Thompson has shown flashes of his scoring potential. He's also only 22 years old with a $4 million team option for this upcoming season. This trade and this boatload of draft picks just made their future incredibly bright. And financially, things are also looking good for Brooklyn. Mikal Bridges was set to make $25 million for 2026, which is fine for a winning team, but not so much for a rebuilding team. If they can move Cam Johnson, they can save $60 million over the next 3 years. Ben Simmons is one of the worst contracts in all of basketball history, but he is on his last year and he is set to make $40 million on a team that is competing for a first-round draft pick. The Brooklyn Nets are going to disappear from the spotlight in this rebuild. However, like I said, they own the futures of both the Phoenix Suns and their New York neighbors, all while having little to no financial commitments for when these draft picks prosper. There's a lot of potential for a strong rebuild, looking like the Oklahoma City Thunder of the East, barring that they don't try to buy a super team again. But for the New York Knicks, this is a team that I am incredibly excited about. As much as we joke about the power of friendship, it has become one of the primary factors for winning an NBA championship. This year, the Celtics' star players were homegrown and they were just surrounded with the right pieces. Same for the Denver Nuggets. Just look at all the Warriors championships with and without Kevin Durant. Same as the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks. All of these teams had star players that were homegrown, and they just had the right pieces put around them. Looking into the last decade of basketball or so, and once again not counting the Durant Warriors, the 2020 LA Lakers are the only team to have won a championship with a superstar player playing their first year on that team, meaning that you cannot just buy a championship player in free agency, and you can't just trade your future hoping for one either. In my opinion, New York already has that superstar player and that power of friendship team. Brunson got this team way farther than what was expected given the vast amounts of injuries suffered. This is a team that lost Julius Randle, who had kicked it up in the second half of the season. They lost OG Anunoby, somebody who is 20-3 in his games as a New York Knick. OG may not be a superstar player, and he may not be that big name that New York basketball is used to, but he has an 87% win percentage over 23 games in New York. That is absolutely insane. You add in other guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, some of the best role players in the entire league, and you have a team that has that special it factor. New York finished second in the Eastern Conference and were just a few shots away from a conference finals appearance when they suffered more star injuries than any team in the entire league. And now you take in Mikal Bridges. Bridges is a near 20-point per game scorer, and like I said, he hasn't taken that superstar leap. However, he's still been an improved player for most of his time in Brooklyn. Putting him in a role where he won't have such a large burden on creating offense is going to help both his and his teammates' efficiency. At his peak, he was shooting 42% from 3 in a primarily catch-and-shoot role. Since then, he shot 37% on an incredibly respectable volume. Just 2 years ago in 2022, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and in his first partial year in Brooklyn, he finished 4th in Most Improved Player voting. Putting him in New York is going to return him to that role that we saw him in with the Phoenix Suns, scoring in transition, off the catch, in the corner, and just the occasional pick-and-roll opportunity. Bridges' most efficient season from 3 came in 2021, a year where 98% of his threes were assisted and nearly 60% of them came from the corner. While these are simple shots, these simple shots are what he's best at. This year his efficiency dropped, as well as his assisted mark, albeit it's still incredibly high at 88%, but for the last season just 33% of his attempts were in the corner. You're adding one of the best 3-and-D players the league has seen in the last half-decade to a team that finished 7th in offense and 10th in defense. This is also a guy who has never missed a game in his NBA career. So for the love of God, I hope Tom Thibodeau doesn't change that. Jalen Brunson is already one of the most talented shot creators we've seen in the last few years, and he effectively carried a more self-centered, injury-riddled offense. There have been 142 individual seasons in NBA history where a player has a usage rate above 32%. Of those players, Brunson sits 42nd in his true shooting percentage, putting him in the 72nd percentile of players relied on this much. He carried a massive burden and, in my opinion, had an underground argument for the MVP award. Giving him a guy like Mikal Bridges, this should give Jalen Brunson the opportunity to push his team over the hump and at least make the conference finals, and this is a team that I think can compete with the defending champion Boston Celtics. And that is all just talking about Mikal Bridges on the court. As a Phoenix Suns fan, I can personally attest to the fact that Mikal Bridges is one of the most likable guys in the entire league, from both a fan and teammate standpoint. Not only is he going to generate more excitement and hype for New York for a team that is already bubbling with it, but it shows that he is likely to play well with just about everyone. Not to mention, this is a reunion of a Villanova Wildcats team with Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Mikal Bridges, the latter three playing on the 2018 championship squad. This is a huge trade for both teams. The Brooklyn Nets have set themselves up for long-term success, and all that you can hope for is that they learned from the past and will actually follow through on the rebuild. The New York Knicks just boosted their chemistry and hype again, while adding a critical player who can take pressure off of Jalen Brunson. The big question for New York is going to be if this trade is worth it for their future and if it moves the needle. 4 first-round picks are practically their entire future, and typically we only see teams trade that many first-round picks for a true superstar. New York is betting their entire future on this core to bring the Larry O'Brien Trophy to Madison Square Garden. This is a trade that could win it all for a franchise or delay them for years. And of course, it's early in the offseason, moves are yet to be made, but in my opinion, this trade puts the New York Knicks over the hump to make them a legitimate contender. You can argue a team with Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and OG Anunoby was one of the best in basketball last year. While this roster didn't jump out at you by having some of the biggest superstars, neither did some of the previous championships. Role players, depth, chemistry, and all being led by just 1 or 2 big-name players has proven time and time again to be a factor of success in the recent NBA. The power of friendship has prevailed good teams into great teams, and great teams into championship teams. While there's no stat to measure chemistry, locker room presence, the love of fans, or how a 3-and-D player opens up an offense and bolsters a defense, but New York may have just become one of, if not the best teams in the league in these categories, and that makes them a team that can compete for an NBA championship.